Coach Stefanski's play calling raised eyebrows. But when he repeatedly sidelined Shedeur Sanders, especially after high-pressure drives that showcased poise and elite vision, critics stopped asking why and started asking how deep does this go? Claims of poor teamwork and a weak arm had already been disproven by fans and analysts. So when Deion Sanders called out the Browns for lies and manipulation, it wasn't just a father defending his son. It was a leader challenging a system built to destroy promising talent through silence, distortion, and fear.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
This wasn't just about one quarterback or one bad game. It was about a franchise in chaos, leaders who let envy and insecurity dictate strategy. It was about a smear campaign undone not by public relations, but by one man's composure and credibility. Sanders' rise didn't just prove the Browns wrong. It exposed their fear of being proven wrong. And in that exposure, the football world saw the difference between leadership and sabotage. The Cleveland Browns are unraveling, fast, and it's not because of injuries or a bad roster or even a tough schedule. It's because they tried to destroy a quarterback they couldn't control, and now the whole world is watching it blow up in their faces. From the moment Shedeur Sanders arrived, the Browns had one job: don't get in your own way. Let the kid play. Let the talent speak. Let the results tell the story. But instead of nurturing the franchise quarterback they clearly had, they launched a behind-the-scenes operation that reads more like a scandal than a strategy. It started quietly. Whispers about Shedeur's attitude. Hints that he wasn't meshing with the team. Subtle suggestions that his mechanics weren't quite right, that his arm wasn't strong enough, that he lacked the leadership needed for the NFL. And just like that, a campaign was underway, one designed to clip his wings before he ever took flight. None of it stuck, because while the front office played PR games, Shedeur played actual football. His decision-making was sharp, his composure under pressure was undeniable, and when given even a sliver of opportunity, he showed flashes of the elite quarterback he's been molded to be. People saw it, fans saw it, the locker room saw it, and so did Deion. Coach Prime didn't have to go scorched earth. He didn't need to rant or flame the organization. All he had to do was speak with clarity, faith, truth, and in doing so, he dismantled the Browns' house of cards. Because when Deion speaks, people listen. And this time, he wasn't just defending his son. He was exposing a franchise that chose fear over facts. You could feel the shift. What started as vague criticism of Shedeur flipped into full-blown support. His name surged online. Interviews with former coaches, teammates, and analysts refuted the Browns' narratives one by one. The bad habits myth? Gone. The selfish player claim? Shattered. The he's not ready excuse? Embarrassing in hindsight. By mid-season, Shedeur was the most Googled athlete of 2025. Not because of drama, but because people wanted to know who he really was. And what they found was the opposite of what the Browns had been feeding the media. This wasn't a kid cracking under pressure. This was a player outperforming a system that was actively trying to limit him. The sabotage wasn't just off the field. It showed up in the play calling, too. Coach Kevin Stefanski made game day decisions that didn't just raise eyebrows, they caused outrage. Shedeur would lead an incredible comeback, regain control of the game, and then, just as the momentum peaked, pulled off the field. Not once, not twice, multiple times. And the explanations didn't make sense. They never made sense. A 2-point conversion call, when the tie was right there, with Shedeur watching from the sideline, that's not strategy. That's sabotage. And if it wasn't, then it's something just as damning, gross incompetence. This isn't about a single bad game. This is about a pattern, one that's impossible to ignore when you step back and look at the full picture. A franchise with no identity, a coaching staff grasping for control, and a quarterback paying the price for someone else's insecurities. And the deeper you look, the darker it gets. Because when a young black quarterback is publicly undermined, privately discredited, and strategically benched despite clear on-field success, the questions stop being about playbooks. They become about power, about protection, about systemic problems that reach far beyond the scoreboard. Some people started connecting the dots. Was the organization tanking on purpose? Trying to avoid giving Shedeur a platform? Was this about maintaining control over a player who wouldn't conform to the old-school mold? Civil rights concerns got raised. Legal theories began circulating. And suddenly, this wasn't just a bad football story. It was a story about abuse of influence. This could have been avoided. The Browns didn't have to become the cautionary tale. They could have been a team that embraced a young star with high character, elite skill, and a father in his corner who understand the game at every level. They could have turned this into a renaissance moment for franchise. Instead, they tried to run a smear campaign, and now they're the ones smeared. They lost control of the narrative. And when that failed, they lost the locker room. Because no matter how hard you try to spin dysfunction, players know the truth. Teammates know who the leaders are. They see who shows up. They know who puts in the work. And Shedeur, he's been earning respect every single day. No tantrums. No outbursts. No cryptic tweets. Just consistent discipline and performance under pressure. That's what's winning people over. That's why this story matters. Because it's not just about a quarterback. It's about integrity. About what happens when you try to kill someone's momentum and they turn it into motivation. And what does that say about the Browns? They had the answer to their long-standing quarterback curse staring them in the face. And instead of backing him, they tried to break him. They didn't just fail to support him. They actively undercut him. On the field, off the field, in the media, in the huddle, through the headset. And now that it's all out in the open, they're doing what weak organizations do when the curtain falls. Nothing. No accountability. No course correction. Just silence, denial, and deflection. But the people aren't stupid. And the NFL doesn't operate in a vacuum. Every player's watching how this was handled. Every top prospect, every agent, every executive around the league. The message is loud and clear. If this is how Cleveland treats their most promising players, what hope is there for anyone else? The Browns aren't just facing a PR crisis. They're looking at long-term damage to their credibility. And they earned every bit of it. Meanwhile, Shedeur's star continues to rise. Not because of hype. Not because of connections. But because real talent, real discipline, and real leadership can't be buried. Not even by a dysfunctional franchise clinging to control. He's outplayed the noise. Outlasted the slander. And now, he stands as proof that performance will always outshine politics. His story is bigger than the scandal now. It's a reminder of what resilience looks like in a league that too often tries to humble the wrong people. The Browns try to silence him, but Shedeur Sanders isn't going anywhere. And the louder his game gets, the quieter their excuses sound. If you've been following the saga from the start, drop a comment and tell us where you stand. Was this pure sabotage or just failure stacked on failure? Smash that like button if you're tired of teams playing power games with their own players. Share this with someone who still thinks the Browns know what they're doing. And hit subscribe, because if this is where the Browns are now, we're just scratching the surface of the fallout. Shedeur didn't just survive the smear campaign. He dismantled it with poise, precision, and the one thing Cleveland couldn't control, the truth. So now we're left staring at the wreckage, because that's what it is. The Cleveland Browns weren't just caught in a little controversy. This was an organizational implosion, set off by their own choices, fueled by their refusal to back their best player, and now echoing through every conversation in the league. This was the moment they exposed themselves, not just as a franchise struggling with wins, but as a franchise struggling with truth. Let's not downplay it. They tried to assassinate Shedeur Sanders' character, tried to rewrite the narrative around him before it could even begin. They didn't want a quarterback with talent. They wanted a quarterback they could control, one who would keep his head down, say the right things, and never, ever challenge the existing power structure. But Shedeur, he didn't play that game. And that's when everything, because once they realized he wouldn't conform, wouldn't shrink, wouldn't self-destruct, they got scared. And when powerful people get scared, they start pulling strings. They start leaking insider stories to the media. They start making bizarre coaching decisions. They start benching a quarterback mid-game for no logical reason, even when he's just led a scoring drive. This wasn't football strategy. This wasn't development. This was punishment. And the public could feel it. every awkward post-game press conference where Stefanski refused to give clear answers. Every media leak that contradicted what fans saw with their own eyes. Every moment Shedeur sat on the bench while the offense sputtered without him. It added fuel to the fire. And the Browns? They poured gasoline on it with every excuse. We're evaluating all our options. We're managing the team dynamic. We're making the best decision for the group. It was all noise, all deflection. Because when you strip away the buzzwords, what you're left with is a franchise too insecure to admit they tried and failed to bury their own star. Meanwhile, Shedeur just kept showing up. No complaints. No drama. Just work. Just football. He stayed focused while the people around him tried to spin narratives. He delivered when they gave him the ball, and stayed ready when they didn't. And when Deion Sanders finally spoke out, the message was simple. Faith, discipline, truth. No yelling. No threats. Just facts. And those facts hit hard. Because Deion didn't need to defend his son with hype, he had the receipts. He knew what the world already saw. That Shedeur was being targeted. That the smear campaign wasn't just failing. It was making the Browns look weak, petty, and completely out of their depth. And the public agreed. That's why Shedeur's popularity skyrocketed. That's why his name topped every trending list. That's why he became the most Googled athlete of the year. Because people saw what was happening. They saw the smear job for what it was. They saw a young athlete being punished for having composure, character, and, most threatening of all, confidence. It's not hard to see what's really going on here. This was never about Shedeur Sanders not being good enough. It was about him being too good, too poised, too independent, too much of a threat to the hierarchy inside an organization that clearly wasn't ready to hand over the reins. And that makes what they did even worse. Because instead of nurturing a generational talent, they chose to suppress him. Instead of empowering their quarterback, they tried to control him. And instead of building a future around his leadership, they chose to sabotage it in real time on national TV. That's not just poor leadership. That's malpractice. And the impact? It's long-term. This isn't a situation you clean up with a press release and a coaching staff shuffle. This is reputational damage. This is trust broken with your fan base, your players, and with the rest of the league. Because every agent, every top draft pick, every free agent with options, they're all watching this unfold. And they're asking the same question. If the Browns are willing to do this to a player like Shedeur, what would they do to me? The Browns didn't just fail one player. They broadcasted to the world that their internal dysfunction runs deep and that it's fueled by fear, not football. And Shedeur? He's still standing. Because the thing they underestimated was his discipline. They thought he'd crack. They thought he'd get frustrated, go public, give them the meltdown they could use as proof that he wasn't ready. But he never gave it to them. Instead, he played the long game. He let the tape talk, let the fans talk, let his performance, his work ethic, and his refusal to engage in their nonsense become his response. That's what real leadership looks like. And that's why this whole story is so backwards. The Browns said they wanted a leader. They said they wanted a quarterback with toughness and poise. But when they had one in front of them, they panicked. Because he wasn't just a leader, they couldn't lead him. And now they've got a franchise on the edge of collapse. Because let's be honest, what's left? A coaching staff that's lost a locker room. A front office that's out of excuses. A quarterback they can't silence. And a fan base that's rapidly turning against them. The longer they delay accountability, the worse it gets. This is where all the bad decisions add up. This is what happens when a team spends more time managing optics than managing talent. When it prioritizes image over impact. And when it confuses obedience with leadership. But Shedeur never needed their approval. He's already shown the league who he is. And now, he doesn't need the Browns to validate it. Because every week, every snap, every calm under pressure, every smart decision, he's making the case they tried to bury. He's not waiting to be handed the franchise. He's proving he is the franchise. And if the Browns can't see that, someone else will. Because that's the part they can't control anymore. The truth is out. The narrative flipped. And now, instead of Shedeur Sanders needing the Browns, it's the Browns who desperately need Shedeur. But the question is, Is it already too late? Have they burned the bridge beyond repair? Has the damage to the relationship, to the trust, to the locker room become permanent? Only time will tell. But one thing's already clear. They tried to erase him, and all they did was make his name. So what happens next? Does Stefanski survive this? Does the front office finally admit what everyone else already knows? Does Shedeur stay loyal to a franchise that showed him none? Or does this end with another team reaping the rewards of a player Cleveland didn't deserve? And here we are, still in the aftermath of one of the most public, painfully obvious meltdowns the NFL has seen in recent memory. Not on the field, but off it. Not from a player, but from an organization. The Cleveland Browns didn't just fumble their season. They fumbled their integrity. And at the center of this disaster, Shedeur Sanders, a player who did everything right and still got thrown under the bus by the very people who were supposed to elevate him. Let's be clear about what this was. This wasn't some run-of-the-mill rookie gets humbled storyline. This wasn't about tough coaching or a learning curve, or any of the standard excuses franchises love to throw around when they mishandle young talent. This was a systematic attempt to damage a player's reputation from within. And why? Because he had too much poise? Because he wasn't willing to kiss the ring? Because the spotlight that followed him made some folks in the building uncomfortable? It's wild. Every trait they said they wanted in a quarterback, Shedeur had. Leadership? Check. Calm under pressure? Check. Work ethic? Check. The ability to execute in big moments? Check. And still, they try to break him. What makes this even worse is that it wasn't just an internal thing. It bled into everything. The leaks, the narrative pushing, the quiet smear campaign, the passive-aggressive interviews. And every single time Shedeur proved them wrong, they didn't pivot. They doubled down. He would lead a comeback drive and get pulled. He would show command on the field. And suddenly, the narrative would shift back to learning opportunities. He would get support from teammates and fans. And the Browns would go quiet, hoping people forgot what they were doing. But no one forgot. And they definitely didn't forget when Coach Stefanski made that now infamous decision to go for 2 with the game on the line. And Shedeur sitting on the bench. Let's not sugarcoat it. That was a choice. That was a moment where everyone watching knew something deeper was going on. Because no coach makes that call unless they're trying to make a statement. And the statement wasn't about winning. It was about the now. The Browns are facing the consequences. Because the narrative has flipped completely. The truth is too loud now. Shedeur's name is everywhere. His game is undeniable. And every lie they try to push about him, lazy, selfish, not ready, it's all been shattered. And then there's Deion. Coach Prime didn't just back his son. He exposed the entire operation. And he didn't have to shout. He didn't have to name names. All he had to do was speak with clarity and let the public fill in the blanks. Because at the end of the day, the truth doesn't need to scream when the evidence is this loud. Deion stood by his son, not with fire, but with facts, with faith, with the kind of leadership that, frankly, the Browns could learn a thing or two from. And while the Browns scrambled to rewrite the script, the public already knew how the story ends. Because it's the same story we've seen too many times. A young black quarterback gets too much shine, and suddenly the rules change. Suddenly, every pass is scrutinized differently. Every mistake is proof he's not ready. Every success is not enough. And when he pushes back, he becomes a problem. It's tired. It's predictable. And it still happens. What makes this one sting is that Shedeur never even pushed back. He just stayed locked in, focused, professional, and still got treated like a threat, a distraction, a name to be managed instead of a player to be celebrated. And the Browns? They can't hide from it anymore. Because every benching, every awkward excuse, every move that contradicted what fans saw on the field, it's all been cataloged, dissected, and rejected by the public. No one believes their version of the story anymore. Not after Shedeur kept showing up, kept performing, and kept doing exactly what they said he couldn't do. And let's talk about the fans for a second, because they've been loud. Cleveland is a football city. They know the game. They know talent when they see it. And they know when something isn't adding up. Every week, more fans started asking the same question. Why isn't Shedeur playing? And when the only answer they got was more spin, more silence, and more inexplicable decisions, the support started shifting, not away from the team, but toward the player they could see was being treated unfairly. That's the thing the Browns have got. You can't gaslight a fan base that actually pays attention. And now, the consequences are setting in. Every game the Browns lose without Shedeur under center, the noise gets louder. Every press conference without accountability chips away at their credibility. And every time Shedeur steps on the field and proves he belongs, it makes the entire franchise look smaller. This is a long-term stain. It's not going away in the offseason. You can't just blame it on growing pains or evaluation processes and expect people to forget. This was deliberate, and now it's documented. And let's not overlook the bigger implications. There are calls for investigation now, not just by fans, but by those asking hard questions about civil rights, about equal treatment, about why a high-character, high-performing athlete was targeted like this. And if there's even a hint of truth to those deeper allegations, the Browns aren't just looking at a culture problem. They're looking at a legal one. That's how deep this could go. That's how messy it's already become. And through it all, Shedeur has stayed focused. He hasn't played the victim. He hasn't lashed out. He stayed ready. Stayed professional. Kept doing the work. And whether it's in Cleveland or somewhere else, the message is clear. He's going to get his chance. And when he does, he's going to make the people who tried to bury him, because what the Browns tried to do wasn't just a personnel mistake. It was a moral failure. And it didn't just backfire. It exposed everything they didn't want the world to see. Now, every move they make will be scrutinized. Every statement questioned. Every decision compared to the way they treated Shedeur. They can't unring this bell. The damage is done. So here's the reality they're facing. They can either fix this or continue to sink. And fixing it doesn't just mean putting Shedeur back on the field. It means publicly acknowledging the wrong. It means owning the sabotage. It means reshaping the culture from the top, because right now, no one trusts them. Not the fans. Not the media. Not the locker room. They had a franchise quarterback, and they tried to bury him under politics, power plays, and whispers. But he didn't fold. He didn't play their game. He stayed the course. And now he's winning. Maybe not every game. But the battle? The war for truth? He already won that. If you're still riding with Shedeur, drop a comment below and let them know. If you've been watching this train wreck and wondering how we got here, hit that like button. And if you're done seeing teams sabotage their own future out of fear, share this video and make sure you're subscribed. Because this isn't just a Cleveland problem anymore. This is a league-wide warning. And Shedeur Sanders? He's the message.